morning. Good morning. Can I invite all delegations, please, to take your seats? I don't want to break this gap. No. The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response is called to order. Heads of State and Government, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization, Mr. Alex van Trotzenberg, Senior Managing Director of the World Bank, Ms. Helen Clark, former co-chair of the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome all of you to this high-level meeting under the overall theme of creating and mainstreaming political momentum and solidarity for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. Before proceeding further, in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 77/275, I first invite the high-level meeting to turn its attention to the draft political declaration entitled Political Declaration of the United Nations General Assembly High-Level Meeting on Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response, the text of which was transmitted to member states by the President of the General Assembly in a letter dated 1 September 2023. Pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/275, following the approval of the political declaration by this high-level meeting, I will submit it for the formal adoption by the General Assembly. May I take it that the high-level meeting approves the draft political declaration, which, pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/275, I will then submit for the formal consideration of the Assembly. It is adopted. I congratulate all members on their approval of this draft political declaration, which I will submit to the General Assembly for its formal consideration at a later date. Allow me to express my sincere appreciation to the co-facilitators of the negotiating process, His Excellency Gilad Erdan, Permanent Representative of Israel, and His Excellency Omar Hilali, Permanent Representative of Morocco, for their skillful stewardship and dedicated hard work, which has brought us to this significant outcome. I also extend my sincere thanks to all member states for their flexibility and constructive engagement.
First, I would like to start by thanking the President and all member states for endorsing the political declaration. This is a very historic day, and thank you so much indeed. We may be tempted to think that the COVID-19 pandemic is history. But history teaches us that COVID-19 will not be the last pandemic. The question we all face is whether we will be ready when the next one arrives. As leaders, we have a collective responsibility to make sure we are ready.
Coup. And the idea is to create a whole new set of laws and ignore the existing human rights laws and other laws under the pretext of pandemic preparedness and the biosecurity agenda. The WHO is developing through all its nations, but with the WHO Directorate in the United States in charge, a pandemic treaty and amendments to the existing international health regulations that will remove the human rights protections currently embedded in the IHRs, will enforce surveillance, censorship, get rid of freedom of speech, require governments to censor and only push a single narrative. Also, we will be subject, if they can make this work, to vaccines developed in 100 days, which the organization CEPI is planning to do. And one of the people who founded CEPI was Jeremy Farrar, who is now the chief scientist at the WHO, to bring this forward. Other things that amendments do is to bind the states so they're no longer recommendations but enforceable edicts, provide a liability shield, get rid of intellectual property rights, move supplies from one country to another, enforce digital passports, and the Director General of WHO can demand that a pandemic or a potential pandemic exists. He can just declare it with no standards, and then countries around the world will have to obey. Also, the WHO will tell you what drugs you can and can't use in your nation once a pandemic is declared. Obviously, the budget will increase. One Health is another part of this. One Health is a concept that was created to enable the WHO, with these documents, to take over jurisdiction of everything in the world by saying that climate change, animals, plants, water systems, ecosystems are all central to health. Also embedded in this concept is a peculiar notion that humans are no longer of greater value than animals.
Soundness. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, 3 years ago, Dr. Tedros and I launched the idea of an international treaty on pandemics. And together, we committed to try to persuade the international community to launch negotiations within the WHO. The world needs an ambitious and legally binding instrument to prevent, prepare for, and respond to future pandemics with solidarity. I now call on all of you to amplify your efforts to conclude negotiations by 2024, and we will be a constructive and open partner in this. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, the Secretary General and all of the UN teams are the linchpin of strong action for humanity and the values of the UN Charter. But as we've seen, UN governance is far too often and increasingly impeded. The EU, of course, supports the reform proposals presented by Secretary General in
Mr. President, all nations pursue their national interests. We, in India, have never seen that as being in contradiction with global good. When we aspire to be a leading power, this is not for self-aggrandizement, but to take on greater responsibility and make more contributions. The goals we have set for ourselves will make us different from all those whose rise preceded ours. India demonstrated this during the COVID through the Vaccine Maitri initiative. Our endeavors, like the International Solar Alliance and the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, have gathered wide support. Our espousing of the International Year of Millets is enhancing global food security today.